Welcome back everybody to Mario Month. I figured this time around we'll start things off by continuing on with the Mario and Luigi series. And also, this video has been uploaded on Mother's Day, so happy Mother's Day. Let's talk about some babies. Mario and Luigi Superstar Saga was such a damn good game. We already had a couple of RPGs in the Mario universe at the time, but hey, you make a new land to explore, you give Luigi a spotlight tied with a unique control scheme, and essentially make it the portable equivalent to the console Paper Marios, and we got something really special. I still love this game, and it holds up incredibly well, and looking back, you know, we got a successful Mario game. Where are the sequels? That's obviously gonna happen. That's obviously gonna happen. E3 2005. This is actually the first time I ever knew there was an annual event where a ton of new games were getting revealed. At the time, I kinda thought that they just happened. This was the year Nintendo unveiled the Revolution. That was enough clickbait to get me interested at the time. And it turns out, yeah, they announced a bunch of stuff that year. And what's that? A new Mario and Luigi game on the DS? And I get to see the game in motion months before it releases? This was an entirely new concept for me back then. Game announcements have excited me to no end ever since. And thusly, the game was mine that upcoming Christmas, alongside Mario Party 7, Mario Tennis Power Tour, and Ed, Edd n Eddy, The Misadventures. I am bringing that game up more than I ever thought I would. Mario and Luigi, Partners in Time, the first foray onto the Nintendo DS, and that one game featuring lead speak Hammer Bros for some reason. The baby Mario Bros are a main selling point here. We got time travel now, that's pretty cool. This is surely something that a commercial featuring guys learning to take care of babies could really help get people excited about what's to come. This one is often considered to be the forgotten game in the series. It didn't get a 3DS remake like games 1 and 3 did. It's just not really that talked about in general. And even when you look at the box art, outside of the original game, outside of Japan, this doesn't do the white background with both Mario and Luigi popping out of the logo. This is just good art, which is fine, but it sticks out like a sore thumb. As a result, I wanted to get to the bottom as to why this is the forgotten game in the series. Some people seem to really love it, some people seem to be indifferent to it. What are my thoughts? It's a Mario and Luigi RPG, alright? Nintendo! Oh, it's good to be back. Man, this title screen is such a nostalgia trip. 2 screens, man, this is so cool. Showing direct footage doesn't really do it justice. They purposefully spaced out their graphics with the screen gap in mind, so it ends up feeling like one big screen instead of 2 separate ones. Yoshi's Island DS did the same thing. I don't know, man, this is one of the coolest things DS games could do in my opinion. Alright, so once again we're dealing with time travel here. Things can be a little bit fishy, but let's give explaining the story a shot. We start off back in Peach's castle in the past, where baby Bowser is trying to steal baby Peach, and the baby Mario Bros go to stop him. They've really been doing this forever. Before long, the castle gets invaded by an army of alien ships, forcing everybody to flee. Meanwhile, in the modern era, we learn that Professor E. Gadd created a time machine, and Princess Peach, along with a couple of Toads, used it to travel back to the past. And would you look at that, it's just about time for the ship to return to the proper time period. Oh, Princess, you don't look so good. After dealing with the alien menace, a time portal pops up out of nowhere in the castle's courtyard. The brothers dive on in, purely by choice, bringing them to the past as well, in the middle of another alien invasion. So yeah, the main villains this time are an alien race, the Shroobs. Not as creative as Bean People, I'm gonna be honest, but hey, it gets the job done. Little purple toad-like things, sure, they're more adorable than evil in my opinion. I wanna just give them a good old pat on the head, but hey, we can make this work. Before long, since everybody is now in the same time period, both sets of brothers finally get to meet up for the first time and all board the Koopa Cruiser for safety. Barring the time both Marios were playing golf for some reason. We didn't ask questions back then, that just happened. Well, the escape plan fails to no one's surprise. They crash land into Bowser's castle, and from that point on, it's a quest to figure out just what the heck is going on with these new alien creatures. We gotta put back together the Cobalt Star, the power source for the time machine, and of course, save the princess, all the while seeing just the most adorable interactions between brothers and baby brothers I could ever imagine. Mario, Luigi! Oh, and yeah, Stuffwell. We have a new helper character now, and he's a suitcase, which is kind of cute, and he's just there, honestly. Realistically, this could have just been a slideshow of the interactions between the Mario Bros and the Baby Mario Bros, and we would have had a 10 out of 10 on our hands. I know time travel logic says you really shouldn't mess with yourself in a different time period, but I don't care, man. This is totally worth it. Aw, look at Luigi sharing a cookie with baby Luigi. This is the cutest thing I've ever seen. I love it. I love it. I just love it. One of the main claims to fame for Partners in Time that you will hear from many people's opinions is that the plot is a lot darker than you would expect. Like, early on, we see a toad strapped to a tree have its life energy sucked out of it, and then it turns into an actual mushroom. What have I gotten myself into here? But if I'm totally honest, on the whole, I don't know, man. It's not a bad story, but I definitely wouldn't say it's all that dark. If anything, it's just more moody than ever. The color palette is a lot more toned down, same thing goes for the music. And the whole purpose of the Shroobs is to simply destroy the Mushroom Kingdom. I get it. But that being said, some of the bosses standing in our way are a caterpillar trying to get a drink of juice and a chubby Shroob holding a lollipop. This does not scream dark and foreboding to me. Wacky antics are a major staple of the Mario and Luigi series, and while it may not be as prominent as the last game, there are definitely some moments of kooky goodness to be found here. Look at this. Baby Mario got fat. Overall, the story is still pretty straightforward. However, in this instance, it's almost to this game's detriment. Once you get the ball rolling, not much really happens. That alien threat is constantly looming over your head, and aside from the introduction of their leader, Princess Shroob, the entire point of the adventure is to simply repair the Cobalt Star, whose pieces have been scattered randomly across the land like they're Dragon Balls. Until the near end of the game, that is pretty much the only plot point that is dragging you along. You just kinda deal with some random alien shenanigans along the way. The menace of the Shroobs can be interesting, but the plot itself isn't. The developers definitely seemed more focused on simply wanting you in control of the bros and baby bros rather than tell a compelling story. Whether or not that matters to you is entirely subjective. This is a Mario game after all, you may not care about the story, but I will take anything we could possibly do to prevent baby Peach from crying ever again. It's the worst. It's genuinely the worst thing I've ever heard in my life. Oh my god, please make it stop. On a gameplay front, well, this is certainly a direct sequel to Superstar Saga, alright? You run around, explore, solve some puzzles in the overworld, and you have the tried and true action turn-based combat for the battles. And just based on that alone, the game is still really fun. Alpha Dream figured out a formula that works, and for the most part, the gameplay is still really solid. There are a few big differences though, two of which being pretty small. Ha! Alongside Mario and Green Mario, we have Baby Mario and Baby Green Mario joining the fray, finally putting the spotlight on the young Luigi after Yoshi's Island. You know, at least one person asked for this. And for a bulk of the adventure, you're in control of all four at once. Similar to how the previous game took advantage of the GBA's 2 face buttons, Partners in Time takes advantage of the DS's 4 face buttons. Now, you don't necessarily operate all 4 of them at the same time at all times, rather the babies often act as a boost to things that you otherwise couldn't do, accessing areas that are too high to reach normally, combining powers to deal stronger damage, stuff like that. You also now have access to a new slew of Bros items for your special moves, which replaces the typical special move stat that we had in the last game. I appreciate the change, but it actually makes it really easy to cheese the stronger enemies here. All it takes to use these moves endlessly is to just purchase them, and that's not a hard thing to do, you get plenty of cash. Overall, it's a harder game than Superstar Saga, however, the enemies are still pretty easy to take down if you pile on the items. Also, if you're willing to risk early stage carpal tunnel, that is a possibility as well. Splitting up the group is also a major focus of the exploration, where you switch up which pair of brothers you get to play as at the push of a button. It usually just results in needing to hit a switch as the babies so the older brothers can progress. It really doesn't get that much deeper than that, honestly. It also doesn't take long for this to feel like a pretty forced gimmick. Having the babies around is a cool idea, but aside from doing slightly stronger damage, they don't really add that much to the overall experience. Unless you count the multitude of adorable cutscenes, and I wouldn't really blame you if you did. A lot of the puzzles feel arbitrarily lengthened to take advantage of the baby concept. Things like swinging a hammer and the weird water inflation from the last game, those are still here. Those are things that Mario and Luigi were perfectly capable of pulling off back then, but they are now restricted to the baby's control, taking longer to execute actions that were pretty quick to use before. Also, do you remember in Superstar Saga you would often run into red and green characters that helped you along the journey to really really bring home the idea of these two brothers working together because hey, there's a bunch of red and green characters working together. Well, aside from traveling back to Yoshi's Island, one enemy in the late game, and one battle against both forms of Bowser, they're kinda just there for the ride. It's not necessarily a bad mechanic, it just feels like a time-consuming way for Nintendo to remind us that hey, we're finally working with 4 buttons and 2 screens here. Oh yeah, 2 screens. This I remember being pretty neat back when the game first released. When you split up and move apart, the babies often occupy the top screen while the older bros take the bottom. By doing this, it's possible to coordinate both duos to be in different places in order to progress. It's not really that big of a deal, I know, but it's still a cool use of the DS hardware. It's even cooler during the battles because some enemies also take advantage of the extra screen space, and many of the special moves that you can pull off require you pay attention to the top screen to better time your actions when they happen on the bottom. It was 2005, the DS was not that old, of course we were gonna get a bunch of 2 screen stuff shoehorned in by any means necessary, and I do like how it's done here. Oh, and speaking of DS specific features, you do also get to use the touchscreen. Once. Whoa, Nintendo, you gotta slow down. Unfortunately, while the characters are fun to control, exploration really isn't all that compelling either. There's no big hub world to explore this time around that branches off into the different parts of the adventure. You just have Peach's castle that will keep popping up time portals that lead to new areas. And as far as those areas are concerned, well, they're not bad, but they often feel super linear, and later on, they start to go on for way too long and nothing interesting happens to keep them fresh. There just aren't that many memorable set pieces here. People seem to remember Gritzy Desert because that theme got remixed in Smash Bros, and Yoshi's Island gets remembered because... Ooh, big boy. This section is definitely the best part of the game in my opinion. We're talking about Mario and time travel here. Not including Yoshi's Island would have been criminal. The fact they didn't overload this level with references to that game is honestly pretty upsetting. At least Paper Mario did it right with a pseudo-return boss fight. Also, you get to explore the insides of a giant Yoshi, and that's just kinda cool. Clearly, Alpha Dream had a really big interest in this. The rest of the areas here are simply a means to an end. They get the job done, but they're overall pretty forgettable. If I bring up the Vin Factory, you may have a blurry image pop up in your head. You might remember what I'm talking about. And if I bring up the Lead Speed Camera Bros from the Vin Factory, then yeah, there's no forgetting that. No matter how many times I try to forget, these two just won't go away. And on top of everything else, there isn't much side content to go for either. There are once again beans to collect and you can exchange them for items. Yeah, that's it. The Fawful cameo is pretty neat and all, you know, I'm glad he didn't die after we blew him up, but this is the only option for something to do when you're not focusing on the story, and you can beat the game just fine without ever messing with it. There are a couple of minigames along the adventure that you have the option to replay, but let's be honest, that doesn't amount to a whole lot. Alright, so I know I got a lot of complaining out of the way, but the reality of the situation is even though the Mario and Luigi format is inherently fun, and the baby gimmick is really interesting, it seems like we got a lot of creative ideas implemented in not so creative ways. But for what it's worth, as you approach the end of the game, things do get a bit more interesting. After a very long trek through Star Hill and the Star Shrine, we make our way to the Shroob Castle, the result of the aliens successfully corrupting Peach's castle in the past. Now this is pretty cool. We've been exploring Peach's castle the entire adventure, so for the final dungeon to share the same layout just filled with aliens and darkness, this is the most threatening the Shroobs have felt the entire game. We even get this 4-person minigame to take out some UFOs, and it's not great, I'm not gonna lie. It takes some time to really nail your shots, but it's over before long. Once you're at the top though, it is time for the final confrontation against Princess Shroob. Now the end of this game is ridiculous. First we get a pretty lengthy fight against the princess, which is one of the more difficult ones in the game, and not for the wrong reasons like with Cacletta, which then leads to the formation of the Cobalt Star, which in reality, while we were trying to fix it, Princess Peach has actually been trying to keep it apart because inside resides her older, stronger, and way more wiggly sister, Elder Princess Shroob. Now, in an effort to avenge her sister, another battle breaks out above the castle. And then, when that's done, she powers up into a second phase, where she is wiggly once again. And this is probably one of the more emotional moments from the game. The music is darker and more depressing than anything in series history, and the fight ultimately becomes a battle between two entire races. You can destroy her for sure, but this will result in you essentially condemning an entire alien race to extinction. And all the Elder knows now is revenge. She is a mindless fighting machine. With so much weighing on your shoulders here, can you, in good faith, destroy an entire race at the push of a button? Yeah, of course I can. A bunch of water is sent back through time in an effort to revitalize the ravaged past, the time machine is repaired, and all is well. Until a fallen Bowser gets corrupted by the Elder Soul, resulting in one more fight where you can't even attack, you just reflect a bunch of attacks coming at you for a few minutes. Holy cow, they really wanted to pad this game out. I don't know why, but Alpha Dream clearly had a quota of an endgame fight against a new form of Bowser in these games. This is a thing, we have to make it a thing. I don't care how last minute of an addition it is going to be a thing. We get one final adorable interaction between brothers and babies, they all go back to their respective time period, and that concludes Partners in Time. A good game, for sure, but one that certainly feels undercooked with how the plot and the baby gimmick was woven into the gameplay. Partners in Time is fun. Just because it's often considered the weakest of the series doesn't make it a bad game, it just has some really stiff competition. If anything, this is the one that needed a 3DS remake the most. If you enjoy all of the other Mario RPGs, you're gonna like this one, that's easy. But when you start comparing it to the other super popular Mario RPG on the DS, Bowser's Inside Story, then we have a different conversation going. It's hard to top this one, but that's a story for next time. I don't want to end things off on a sour note here. This is the first episode of Mario Month in 2020. So, hey Luis, can we play a clip of Mario yelling out babies one more time? Babies! 10 out of 10.